All right, guys, so this is a video to remind you how to factor. Hopefully this is something you remember, but if not, hopefully you will remember after watching this video. Okay, so if you go to your notes, okay, there's a part of your notes that's factoring review. That's what we're going to go over. Okay, so on number 1 and 2, when I look at these, all I'm going to do here is pull out a GCF, so a greatest common factor, GCF. Okay, so basically, what can I pull out of each term? Okay, so on number 1, we have two terms. We have the 2x squared, and then we have the minus 8x. Okay, so if I look at the numbers 2 and 8, I want to know what is the biggest number that I can pull out of both of these. Okay, well, obviously, that's 2. Okay, 2 is a factor of 2, 2 is a factor of 8. Okay, and then if I look at my x squared, okay, I have an x squared on the left and an x on the right. I want to take the lesser of the two because it's a number, or it's a value, I guess, that I want to pull out from both. And I cannot take an x squared from an x because there's more x's in x squared than x. Okay, so my GCF is 2x. Okay, now I'm going to put parentheses around it. Okay, now basically I'm going to divide each of these terms by 2x. Okay, so when I divide 2x squared by 2x, all I'm left with is x. And when I divide 8x by 2x, all I'm left with is a 4, and I keep that minus sign. Okay, so this would be my factored form. Now, something you do want to note is that at all times in your factoring, your factored product should be the same as what you're starting with. Okay, just written in a different form. So if we distribute this out, okay, 2x times x is a 2x squared. 2x times a negative 4 is a minus 8x. Notice these two are the same. Okay, that tells us we did a good job factoring, but that should always hold true. All right, let's look at number 2 now. Okay, now when we look at numbers, I have a 16, a 24, and an 8. Okay, so my greatest common factor among all of those is, of course, the 8. So I'm going to pull out an 8. Okay, now if I go to my x's, I have an x cubed, an x squared, and an x to the 4th. I want to take the least of the 3, so that's x squared. Okay, I have a y to the 8th, a y to the 6th, and a y to the 7th. Once again, I want to take out the least of them, which is y to the 6th. Okay, and then on my z's, I have a z to the 4th, a z to the 6th, and a z to the 1st, if you want to call it a first or just a z. And so all I'm going to take out is the z. Okay, when I do that, 16 over 8 is 2. X cubed over x squared is just an x. When I start with 8 y's and I take 6 away, I'm left with a y squared. And then z to the 4th over z is just a z cubed. Okay, then I have a minus. Now 24 divided by 8 is 3. X squared divided by x squared is 1, so when we're multiplying, I don't have to write it. Y6 divided by y6, again, is just a 1. And then I have a z6 divided by z is z to the 5th. Okay, and then the last one, plus. Well, 8 divided by 8 is 1. X to the 4th divided by x squared is x squared. Y to the 7th divided by y to the 6th is just y, and then a z divided by z, which is just 1. Okay, so this should be my final factored answer. And then if you distribute this, guys, you should come out with the same thing as this. And if you don't, you did something wrong. All right, so now let's look at the next page. Okay, on here, we don't have a GCF for these. Okay, so I have to factor it another way. Okay, so when I look at this, okay, remember when I have a quadratic, we have ax squared plus bx plus c is equal to 0. Okay, or equal to y or whatever. Okay, so our a is always the value in front of our x squared, our b is always the value in front of the x, and our c is the number by itself. Okay, so when I factor these, I want two numbers that multiply to a times c and add to b. Now it's important to note that not every single equation can be factored. Okay. All right, so in this case, my a is the coefficient in front of the x squared, which is just a 1. So my a is 1. My b is negative 3. And my c is negative 18. Okay, so when I multiply, I want two numbers that multiply to a times c. So a times c is 1 times negative 18, so they multiply to negative 18, and then they add to my b, which is negative 3. Okay, now this is pretty easy, but if it's not, okay, I always go through and find the factors of 18. So I have 1 and 18, 2 and 9, 3 and 6, yeah, and then go back up, 9 and 2, and 1 and 18. Okay, so I want to ask myself, obviously one of them has to be a negative because we're multiplying to negative 18. So if one of them's a negative, which two of these, okay, would add to negative 3? Well, that would be these, okay, because negative 16, negative 6 times 3 is negative 18, which is what I want. And then negative 6 plus 3 is negative 3, which is also what I want. Okay, so I want to use those two numbers now to put them here and here. Okay, now after I do that, I want to rewrite this equation, okay, but I want to change my v. Now my b, it's going to be the same thing. We're just going to write it a little different. So x squared. Now rather than write minus 3x, I write it with the two numbers we just came up with. So I'm going to say minus 6x plus 3x minus 18. Okay, now I want you to take a minute and take note that this is the same thing as this. Okay, it's just written differently. So hopefully you're convinced of that. Okay, the reason we do that now is because now we use the box method, guys, and I like to use the box method because it goes far beyond just factoring, okay? We use the box method a lot in Algebra 2. Okay, so I have four terms, so x squared minus 6x plus 3x minus 18. Okay, I just got the four terms from here. Okay, now when I factor, I always start with this here and I pull out my GCF. Well, x squared and 3x, the only thing I can pull out is an x. Okay, well, x, if I look at this as an area model now, if this is x squared, if the area of this is x squared, well, the only thing that makes x squared is x times x, so this has to be an x. Okay, and if this is negative 6x and this is x, then this has to be negative 6. Okay, and if this is x up here, this is 3x down here, this has to be a plus 3. And if I've done everything right, my 3 times negative 6 is negative 18, which is good. Okay, so these are my factors. Okay, so x minus 6 times x plus 3. Okay, and once again, during all parts of this process, these are the same thing. Okay, if you FOIL this out, you will see that this equals x squared minus 3x minus 18. If you don't believe me, I encourage you to do that. All right, I would like you to pause this video and try number 2 on your own, and then we'll go over it when you get back. All right, so hopefully you went and worked through this one out yourself. Okay, now here's my a, b, and c. I got that just my coefficients of my equation. Okay, then I set up my x, so I have two numbers that multiply to a times c, which 1 times 24 is 24, and they add to b, which is negative 14. Okay, well, that means negative 12 and negative 2, because negative 12 times negative 2 is a positive 24, and negative 12 plus negative 2 is a negative 14, which is what I want. Okay, so when I put those in for the negative 14x, I'm left with x squared minus 12x minus 2x plus 24. These are the same. Okay, very important as we factor. Okay, and then if I put each of these 1, 2, 3, 4 terms in the box, okay, and then I factor out my GCF and then I use an area model, what I get is x minus 12 times x minus 2. So this is my factored form. All right, let's look at number 1 here. Okay, now my a value is at 1, but if you factor the way I just showed you, it doesn't matter. You do it the same way. Okay, so I still want two numbers that multiply to a times c. So multiply to 2 times 6, which is 12, and they add to 7. Okay, well, you should be easily able to see that that's plus 3 and plus 4. Okay, so I'm going to change this to 2x squared plus 3x plus 4x plus 6. Okay, well, Then I want to put those four terms in the box. So 2x squared, 3x, 4x, 6. Okay, I always start with this column here. So in 2x and 4x, my greatest common factor is a 2 and an x. Okay, well 2x, if that's 2x, that's 2x squared. This has to be an x. Okay, well then x times 3x, or x times what is 3x? Well, that'd be a 3. This has to be a 2, and if everything's right, 2 times 3 is 6, which it is. So my factored form are right here. So it's 2x plus 3, x plus 2. Okay, so I want you to pause this real quick, do number 2 on your own, and then we'll go over it. All right, so let's go over this. Okay, two numbers that multiply to a times c. A times c is negative 24. They add to b, and our b is negative 5. So those two numbers are negative 8 and positive 3. Okay, so when I change my negative 5x into negative 8x plus 3x, I get four terms, and I put them each in this box. Okay, and then when I factor out a GCF, I get 3x minus 4 and 2x plus 1. So this should have been your final answer. All right, let's look at 3 now. Okay, 3 looks a little bit different, but the process remains the same. Okay, so here our A is 9, okay, and our B is 0, and our C is negative 49. Okay, so I still want two numbers that when you multiply them, they multiply to A times C, which is negative 441. And when you add them, they add to B, which is 0. Okay, so think about this. The only way I can add two numbers and they add to 0 is if I add either 0 plus 0, or if I add the same number, just one is positive and one is negative. Okay, so what times itself, so what positive number, so basically x times negative x is 441. Well, if I do the square root of 441, that gets me 21. Okay, square root of 441 is 21. Okay, so 21 times negative 21 is negative 441. 21 plus a negative 21 is 0, so these are my two numbers. Okay, then we can throw them in the box. So we could have a 9x squared minus 21x, sorry, plus 21x minus 49. Okay, well, greatest common factor here is a 3x, which means this has to be a 3x. This is a minus 7. This is a plus 7. So my factored form is 3x minus 7, 3x plus 7. All right, guys, there's one small thing different on 4 that I probably should have been emphasizing this whole time that I haven't. So here, before we factor, we can take out a GCF of 2. Okay, so that's 3x squared plus 11x minus 4. Okay, now I want to take this and factor this out. Okay, so I have two numbers that multiply to negative 12, add to 11. So I want you to pause this video here. I want you to finish this out, and hopefully if you can get this, you're good to go. All right, so when you do this, you should get 12 and negative 1 as your two numbers. So we're going to change the plus 11x to plus 12x minus x. Okay, and then once again, we're factoring what's on the inside. So we put it in the box, okay, and you get x plus 4 and 3x minus 1, but make sure when you write this as your final answer, don't drop this 2. Okay, your 2 stays the same. And remember, if you were to go ahead and expand this, you would end back up where we start because these are the same things, just written differently.